Hello, dear listeners. Welcome back to the Flavors and Knowledge podcast. We continue this new feature dedicated to health, wellness, and nutrition. This content is included in the latest book released by Chef Walter Potenza, titled Eat Like a Champion, available on all your preferred platforms. This episode is titled, Food Detectives Know What's in Your Food. The day I read a label and couldn't recognize half the ingredients. I remember exactly where I was the first time I carefully read a processed food label. It was 1994. I was standing in a supermarket aisle in suburban Rhode Island, holding a jar of pasta sauce, the kind marketed directly at children, with a cartoon character on the front and the word healthy printed in bright green letters. I read the ingredient list. It contained high-fructose corn syrup, 3 different kinds of modified starch, 2 artificial colorings, a preservative I could not pronounce, and somewhere around the 14th ingredient, actual tomatoes. I put the jar back on the shelf and stood there for a long moment, genuinely troubled. In 35 years of professional cooking at that point, I had made pasta sauce hundreds of times. The ingredients were tomatoes, olive oil, garlic, onion, basil, salt, and thyme. That was it. What I was holding was something that shared a name with pasta sauce but bore almost no relationship to it in terms of ingredients, process, or nutritional value. And it was being sold to families as a healthy choice for their children. That moment changed how I thought about my work. I had always been a chef who cared about ingredients. Every professional cook does. Quality matters, freshness matters, sourcing matters. But from that day forward, I became genuinely obsessed with food literacy. The idea that people, especially children, deserve to understand exactly what they are eating and why it matters. A child who can read a food label, not just the calorie count but the full ingredient list, is equipped with one of the most important life skills in the modern world. The processed food industry is extraordinarily good at what it does. I say this without rancor and without simplistic villainizing. These are companies staffed by intelligent, skilled people who have spent decades perfecting the science of making food that sells. The problem is that what sells and what nourishes are often very different things. The industry has learned that sugar, salt, and fat, in precise, engineered combinations, trigger pleasure responses in the brain that real whole foods rarely match for sheer immediate intensity. They have learned that packaging language natural, wholesome, nutritious, made with real fruit, creates positive associations regardless of what is actually inside. And they have learned that children are particularly susceptible to color, characters, and the language of fun. Sugar is the thing I talk about most when I work with young people on food literacy. Not because sugar is uniquely evil. The body needs glucose, and natural sugars in fruit come packaged with fiber, vitamins, and water that slow their absorption and make them nutritionally valuable. The problem is added sugar, hidden under dozens of different names on ingredient labels. High-fructose corn syrup, dextrose, maltose, sucrose, cane juice, rice syrup, agave nectar, barley malt. When I show children a list of all the names sugar hides under, their eyes go wide. It becomes a detective game, and children, I have found in 40 years of teaching, are natural detectives. Salt is the second lesson. Processed food contains extraordinary quantities of sodium, not because manufacturers are indifferent to health, but because salt is a powerful preservative and an equally powerful flavor enhancer. When food has been processed, and much of its natural flavor stripped away, salt is the most efficient way to make it taste like something again. Teaching children to taste food critically, to recognize the metallic, aggressive quality of oversalting compared to the rounded, integrated salinity of well-seasoned fresh food, is a skill that serves them for a lifetime. The deepest lesson I try to convey, however, is the most basic one. The shorter the ingredient list, the better. This is not an absolute rule. There are complex, multi-ingredient dishes that are extraordinarily nutritious. But as a general principle for navigating a supermarket, it holds. An ingredient list you can read aloud without stumbling is almost always better than one that requires a chemistry degree to decode. Ingredients you could buy individually at a farmer's market are almost always better than ingredients synthesized in an industrial facility. Food your great-grandmother would recognize is almost always better than food she would have found baffling. After 50 years of cooking, the thing that has stayed with me is not the Michelin stars, the accolades, or the restaurants I built. It is the moment when a child in one of my classes picks up a food package, reads the label carefully, puts it back on the shelf, and says, "There's too much stuff in this." That child is going to be fine. That child knows something essential. Knowledge in the kitchen and in life is the most powerful ingredient of all. Thank you for joining us on today's journey through flavor and discovery, and for the privilege of your time. The content for this episode is written by Chef Walter and produced by Simval Media, USA.